Welcome back to Uncensored. Hamas says the death toll in Gaza has now surpassed 20,000 people, with nearly 2 million others displaced from their often destroyed homes. With calls for a permanent ceasefire are growing ever louder. But in a defiant speech today, Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will not stop.
מי שחושב שנעצור, פשוט לא מחובר למציאות. לא נפסיק את הלחימה עד להשגת כל המטרות שהצבנו. חיסול החמאס, שחרור חטופינו, והסרת האיום מעזה.
Well, should the US now back calls for a ceasefire, and could Israel face sanctions for the scale of its response on October the 7th? Joining to discuss this is the independent presidential candidate, Dr. Cornel West, and international law expert, Eugene Kontorovich. Welcome to both of you. Cornel West, great to have you back on the programme. Let me ask you, first of all, Benjamin Netanyahu tonight, very unequivocal. Israel will keep fighting Hamas until they are eradicated, which means there's going to be months and months more of what we've been seeing. What is your response to that?
Well, as you know, I've called for Netanyahu and the IDF to be brought before the ICC, the International Criminal Court, Article 6, 7, and 8, crime of genocide, crime against humanity, and war crime. And what I mean by that is we need to live in a world in which we fundamentally believe that Palestinian suffering has the same value as Jewish suffering has the same value as Palestinian suffering. If this were a Palestinian occupation and domination, a Palestinian genocide against Jews in which there were nearly 8,000 precious Jewish babies killed in 50 days, we'd have a qualitatively different discussion, qualitatively different response. And I believe Biden, Harris, Austin, we can go right down the line, Kirby, Blinken, they are complicitous with Israel's war crimes against the Palestinians. Has Hamas committed war crimes? Absolutely, they've committed war crimes, but not crimes of genocide. And when Netanyahu invokes Amalek, 1 Samuel 15:3, in the biblical text, and I speak as a Christian, I know the difference between those divine sanctioned genocidal commands, kill every woman, kill every child in order to procure our end. He's invoked a number of times. October 28th, he's invoked Amalek. That's genocidal intent. And this genocidal attack flowing from that intent. We have to have a moral consistency across the board. Every baby, no matter who they are in the world, have the same value.
Let me go to Eugene then. For your response to that, I mean, you'll be aware, Eugene, that much of the world is now watching with horror the scale of Israel's response. And when they hear Netanyahu saying this isn't going to stop until we've got rid of all of Hamas, and at best estimates, they've only killed 6,000 to 7,000 Hamas terrorists, and that's just if you take IDF's word for it. That means that 80% of Hamas has not been eliminated yet. How many civilians are going to get killed in the next few months or even years before Hamas is eradicated? And how, in the end, does that help either peace in the region, or how does it stop just massive escalation and radicalization against Israel?
So how many civilians will die is largely a function of Hamas's decisions, because Hamas has a specific strategy of trying to kill as many Israeli civilians as they can, as they did on October 7th, and trying to get as many of their own civilians killed, which they do by hiding in tunnels under populated areas, basing themselves in schools, in hospitals. Their strategy is to roll up their civilian death toll, which at the same time, Israel does everything to limit. Israel is only targeting Hamas. Now, Hamas makes it difficult by hiding amongst civilians, and the deaths of those civilians are Hamas war crimes. The accusations of genocide, it's what psychologists call projection, accusing your enemy, the other side, of exactly what you're doing to distract and whitewash what you're doing. October 7th was a genocidal invasion of Israel, where Hamas invaded Israel, chopped up families in front of each other, burned people alive. And now Israel is responding more moderately than any country would.
Let me just put you on that. In terms of its supposed moderate response, in the last few days alone, we've seen the IDF shoot dead 3 Israeli hostages who were wearing no shirts and had a banner asking for help. They were surrendering whoever they were, but it turned out to be hostages. Then we had 2 women, innocent women, standing outside a Catholic church who were also gunned down by IDF snipers in an action that the Pope called terrorism. You've also got President Biden describing the bombing campaign as indiscriminate, which in itself, that description implies a war crime. So this idea that Israel's being moderate in its response, I don't think is borne out by reality, is it?
President Biden has actually said, and other American officials have said, that Israel is acting more morally than any other army. Now, show me a war without inadvertent civilian casualties. When America cleared ISIS out of Mosul, 10,000 civilians were killed in that city alone, and America was not fighting an enemy next door that was actively shooting rockets at it and holding its citizens hostage. If Professor West had his way, Nazi Germany would still rule Europe, because, of course, hundreds of thousands of German civilians died in the war against Nazi Germany.
All right, but let me bring
the Confederacy would still rule half of America.
Let
me just say about the hostages. About the hostages, because that's a sensitive point. That's a tragic incident, of course. And we saw today that the mother of one of the hostages said she does not blame the Israeli soldiers. She embraces them because she knows that Hamas, again, is responsible for their deaths, because Hamas has used every kind of subterfuge to trap Israeli soldiers. Let me go to fake surrenders and suicide.
Let me bring back in Cornel West. Cornel West, the moral conundrum here for many people is that what happened on October the 7th was utterly horrific. An appalling terrorist attack on mostly civilian, innocent people.
These are precious human beings.
And when you have, Cornel, here's my question. Here's my question. When you have Hamas stating, since October the 7th, we want to do that again and again and again, when it is their mission statement to wipe out Israel and any Jews who live in Israel, when we all can see and hear them say this with brazen impunity, what is Israel supposed to do other than try to remove Hamas?
Hamas is very much like the Jewish Irgun, which is a terrorist group responding to vicious British imperialism that killed innocent Arabs. Every resistance movement against colonialism, domination, and oppression, apartheid-like conditions, you have nonviolent streams, you have nonviolent streams. The first Intifada was nonviolent. The second one was primarily nonviolent, only with rocks. And what did JFK say? When you make nonviolent revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. You had to, with the Jewish Irgun, there's always been terrorist expression. The problem is the IDF, which comes out of Jabotinsky, which was tied to the Jewish and terrorist history, and this is a part of Jewish history, is not all. There's been the Einsteins and the Albert Magnus and others who call for very different things. But when I hear my brother Eugene say they've only killed Hamas, they killed 2 Christian women in front of a church, a mother and a grandmother. You mean almost 8,000 children are being shielded by Hamas? Do you really believe the world is going to think that's serious? These justifications are as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid when we see the massive suffering of precious Palestinians who are innocent. So this notion that somehow you can continue to put forward these lies, though, Brother Eugene, the world is no longer convinced. Okay, and you know this is true within the Jewish community.
I've got to leave the debate. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. I've got to leave the debate there. It's an interesting debate. Passions run high on both sides. Thank you both very much for joining me. Cornel, I want to wish you ongoing success with your campaign in the presidential race. The Economist.
Both of you brothers, I pray for your families and stay strong, and let's try to hold up a bloodstained banner of some serious morality and spirituality in a moment of massive hatred and tribalism.
Yep, I would certainly.
In the name of Amos, in the name of Isaiah, and in the name of Jesus.
I would certainly agree with that. But I was going to read you a quote from The Economist today, which said, Cornel West has the charisma and energy of James Brown if the godfather of soul had also gone to graduate school. And if that isn't something you want to put on your tombstone one day, Cornel West, you're mad.
Well, that's not true. James Brown is far beyond me, but I aspire to that kind of movement and that kind of funk, my brother. Absolutely.
It's great to see you. And thank you very much, Eugene, as well, for joining me. I appreciate it.
God bless both of us.